The Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. Real Doctor Who fans with real Doctor Who opinions.
Hello and welcome to the Alhambra podcast dedicated to discussing and reviewing all things Doctor Who, Big Finish, science fiction, and other things that tickle our fancy. I am your host, Brett. And today I am doing yet again a solo edition as the Dalek Litigator has brought up some very interesting evidence based around the Liam and Legion Naimon petting fiasco. It's going to be a fiasco now, but fear not, I am here to talk about all things Doctor Who, Big Finish, and other things that tickle my fancy. In today's podcast is basically going to be focused around the Doctor Who viewing figures, the very controversial viewing figures, and also the Doctor Who fandom, and some reasons why these numbers may be what they are, why they're slipping, and give you my spin on the current state of Doctor Who and possibly the viewing fandom. So, that being said, I'd love to hear from you. Please email me at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. That is ALHAMBRA audio, all one word, at gmail.com. You can tweet the show at Alhambra Podcast. DMs are open. And so, without further ado, let's get into episode 324 of the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast about viewing figures and the loss of a fandom? ? All right. So, I'm Ron Burgundy also. I think there's some very complex things that are going on with Doctor Who and the viewing figures. As we go back to when the Jodie/Chris Chibnall era first came in, obviously Overnight was huge with 8.2 million. The 7-day multi-screen was 7-day plus 4 was 10.96 million, so almost 11 million. It immediately dropped. And if you look at all the viewing figures from just about every single episode, there's always a drop. The worry, though, is the consistent drop. And with at least Jodie's first era, it went from around 11, and it concluded at about 7 or so with the 7-day plus 4 screen. So, that being said, you could say everybody jumped on to see the first female Doctor, and either it was just one of those things, kind of like comic books and number one issues. When it comes to number one issues in comic books, lots of people are immediately there to pick them up because, Action Comics number one, for some reason, crazy expensive. Fantastic Four number one, crazy expensive. So, you always have that issue number one that pulls people in. People that are familiar with comics will know that after, and if you look at the purchase figures, which used to be accurate up until the pandemic when they stopped being able to count them, but after issue number one, number two sometimes dipped by half of that, and then after issue number 2 or 3, or 3 or 4, it would be half of that, and then just depending on if what the purchase price was, the order was, depended on if it was going to continue on or if it was eventually going to fold as a series and then do what at least Marvel is very guilty of all the time, and that is close it and then restart it up with another issue number 1, because again, collectors picking up issue number 1. So it's kind of interesting to kind of compare and contrast the difference between comic books and also Doctor Who. So again, Jodie's first season, not too bad. Then we pick up for their second season, the whole Spyfall Part 1, Part 2. And again, episode number 1, Overnight, 4.88, dropped by 2,800, or 28, whatever. 280,000 from episode 1 to episode 2 from Spyfall or whatnot. Again, kind of an expected drop, but it's not until you look at episode 10 where the overnights were dropped almost 1.1 million and the 7 plus 4 screens dropped to nearly 2 million. So again, things were not going well at all. You have not the Christmas special for Jodie, that you have the New Year's Day special, which never became a thing. Then we had the Flux series, which again started off high at 4.43 million, concluding, or overnight figure concluding at 3.58 million, so almost a loss of 1 million. But the 7+4 screens loss went from 8.81 to 4.61, so a loss of 1.20 million between the 7-day consolidated plus multiple screens. And it just goes to show you the loss of a fandom. And you could say, the hard part about it is, and I think things need to be looked at rationally, and I do have a list I'm going to go over, but the claim was all these people that walked away from the, like I said, 8.2 million from 2018 / the 7-day plus 4 consolidated, the almost 11 million or whatever, that dropped to a huge amount, about 5 million or so from Flux episode 5. So 5 million people suddenly become sexist and racist or whatnot. I think it's so easy to just throw out labels and accusations and say that's the reason why. I think that's lazy. I think that you're not giving people the respect that they deserve. The audience, the AI, the audience index or whatever, audience appreciation index, shouldn't it be AAI? Anyway, it was always in the 70s for the Jodie era. We go to, again, I want to give a whole look at this, then look at the current series, and then kind of go through some other stuff. So we look at the David Tennant 14th Doctor specials. We have the Disney Plus situation. Now, at this point in time, if memory serves me right, it was still BBC One first, and now over here on Disney Plus second during these specials. So, overnight viewing for special number 1, 5.08, and then the 7+4 screens, 7.61 million. So again, an increase of about 2.6 million views from that one. And then each one drops, not a huge drop, but it still drops. Then you have the Christmas special, which, it overnight never got up to, and here's the one thing that needs to be focused on, is this was still a day of viewing. We did not have the BBC iPlayer that was confuddling the numbers or whatever. So the overnight figures for the Christmas special, Shooty's first episode, full episode. Well, actually, we could just go back to the special number 3 because that was his first appearance. And again, comic book wise, first appearance is more expensive. But the overnight figure was 4.62 million for special number 3, the Giggle. And then the 7-day plus 4 screens, 6.85 million. Again, a difference of about 2.2 million in views. Okay, so then we get the Christmas special, which is going to be his first full appearance. Does not break the 5 million. It basically, the Christmas special gets between, specials 2 and 3, which, this should be prime time viewing right here. It does almost break the 7-day plus 4 screens consolidated number, but still is relatively low at 7.49 million. I will tell you personally, I don't think it's a good episode. I think a lot of the Christmas or the specials were less than special, especially when you think back to the original specials by RTD. So you could say that the Christmas special, the overnight 4.73 million, or you have the 7-day plus 4 screen 7.49 million. And I think those two numbers are something to focus on, because both of those numbers should be exactly where episode 1 of season 1 of Shooty's season should take off from. And it doesn't. And I think that's the scary thing about the whole thing, is between that time you had some people, again, I myself did not like Shooty's acting in the holiday special. I did not also like the fact that they kept on going with the Timeless Child. I think that that is a horrible, horrible storyline, and I do not like it. Sam I Am, I do not like it with my green eggs and ham. I don't apologize. I just don't like it. However, you have for episode 1, well, not only that, but you have the cast and crew criticizing the fans, telling them to go touch grass, telling them to not watch it. You have one the cast members who's basically saying for every one person that leaves the show, 3 more will take their place because they like what the direction of what RTD is doing. And so far, season 1 of RTD Part 2, that has not happened. And I think that there's some things to take a good look at, and I think, and I know I do like numbers, and I realize that this probably could be a little bit better done if I did this on a YouTube video with a screen capture or whatnot, but that's besides the point. I'm just going to be doing this on the podcast. But so you'd expect, Christmas numbers ended with 4-something million, near 5. Episode 1 overnight, again, now everything has changed now. Disney Plus is getting it first, and also the BBC iPlayer is getting it first compared to day and date viewing. So day and date viewing should be lower. But what should not happen is, the 7-day plus 4 consolidated numbers should be meeting up to where the Christmas specials or the specials were and the Christmas episode. So if you remember, the Christmas episode from Shooty's last one was 7.49 million. So that's what you should expect for Space Babies from the 7-day plus 4 consolidated. And it's not. It is 4.01 million. Overnight, again, I think overnight is kind of, as Liam would say, that's not how we do things anymore. It's very dated. And I agree, but it's still a metric in certain things. It might not be a metric in how people make their decisions. And so the only thing that you have to say is what happened to about the 3.5 million people between the Christmas episode and episode 1. And it never recovered from episode 2, 3, and currently 4. As of day of recording, we don't have any data on episode 5. And you could say there's a couple things that are going on. First off, people have their Disney Plus things. Because it is blocked in the UK, they might be viewing it through a VPN possibly. That could be a thing. You could have somebody who, got it on the Disney Plus, put it on the Pirate Bay, and people are watching it that way. But you're basically saying about 3 million people are doing that. And especially if you're wanting the show to survive, you wouldn't want to do that. However, the interesting thing about that is that some of the people, and there is a plausibility for that also, because currently with Marvel Comics, you have people who are yelling at people about X-Men comics because some people do not like the way the X-Men comics are going. And when it comes to asking those people who are yelling at everybody, what are you buying? They come out and brag, oh, I don't give Marvel any money because it's owned by Disney and they don't do this, 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 and this. So F them. Okay, so the comics that you're screaming at people about and screaming at them for not supporting, you also are not supporting that also. And so in doing so, you're basically setting up the show to cancel. If it is good as the people who are screaming at everybody on Twitter are saying, why is it not doing well? And again, it can be going off and saying, well, there's the Disney Plus streaming. It's now more easily available compared to BBC America now that it is on Disney Plus. That is true. And it's also on a streaming network, which is also true. Well, you know what I mean. But I think that there is some fallacies in so many different YouTubers and either doomsayers or people who are coming to Doctor Who's aid. I think there's a lot of things there, but at the end of the day, if you want the show to survive, you need to be able to be watching it, and it needs to also not be, saved by the shouting fans. It needs to be saved by actual factual figures that people can, rely on and saying, hey, it's not doing as bad as it should be doing. According to my research, Samba TV does not have any data facts on Disney Plus's shows. The only thing that I was able to find was a site that doesn't, at least for me, does not seem user friendly, but can have some information on the streaming numbers for Disney US. But again, it doesn't really. The other question is what does it take to be a viewing number? Do they do kind of like what Netflix does in viewing hours? Or is it just a figure that I don't know. I think there's a lot of things to talk about. I think there's a lot of things to delve into and try to figure out what actually is a viewing figure. Again, episode 4, 73 Yards, never watched it. I accidentally watched episode 5 because I thought it was the non-RTD story. I didn't like that one, but it wasn't. It was the RTD story. But the belief for why the bump in episode 4 for 73 Yards is there was a soccer game or football game that was being played. It went into overtime, and then it transitioned into episode 4, 73 Yards. And the question is, well, what does it take for the BBC to classify that as a viewing figure? Because the interesting thing is if you look at the difference between overnight and 7-day, you'd expect that the 7-day number would be a lot larger if more people were watching it. And so there is some plausibility to the viewing figures or the overnight figures to be up for episode 4 because of the soccer game or football game. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of things to think about. However, what I'm going to do right now is I created a list of factors of why a show would be losing viewers. There could be many different causes for this, especially because it's a long time series. And according to one of the comic book journalists, maybe all the Doctor Who fans are dying, because that's the reason why the people are not buying some comics, is because all the comic fans are dying. So whatever. So some internal factors. So number 1, story quality and consistency.
It could have been a lot better. It could have been slightly better written, especially the last story. Well, not only that, but it was also very cliched. It was very routine, running up and down corridors and silly monsters.
And I think, for me, I think that's where I kind of really, if Liam was here, it'd be like, well, why did you see through the Chibnall era? I didn't know the Chibnall era was going to lead to the Timeless Child. Even after the Timeless Child and what happened at the very end of series 12, I was always hoping something would be fixed. And then you have the flux, and you have this weird situation, and again, hoping that things are going to get fixed. And things still have yet to ever be fixed. And I think, to me, that really hurts the show. And with RTD basically saying, well, I'm not going to undo anything my friend did, I think that is very short-sighted and kind of stupid. If your friend did not, regardless of, how much of a friend they are. If your friend did a bad job, they did a bad job, and you should be able to fix it, and they should still be your friend if they are legitimately your friend. However, if you're worried about them, folding and cracking and crying for weeks upon end, well, then that's on them because they did a bad job. But what has me kind of stepping away from RTD Part 2 is the fact that the worst thing about the Chibnall era, the Timeless Child, has been doubled down. And then you have the giggles by generation. And it just feels as though, kind of like last podcast, talking about the Season 6B, the Big Finish Second Doctor series, I feel as though the by generation has really taken a dump on that right there. And I don't think that Chibnall or RTD is either he cares or is aware of the damage he is inflicting upon everything, because I don't know what he's doing on RTD Part 2, but I'm not liking RTD Part 2 currently. So yeah, plot issues. If the storylines of the season is weak, convoluted, or engaging, viewers may lose interest as the season progresses. And we've seen that as I gave you the viewing figures for season 11, 12, and the 12, the Flux, the specials, and the current season. Then we have the character development. Poor character development or unpopular character arcs can lead to viewer dissatisfaction. Again, with the 12th Doctor, I feel as though there was poor character development. You had Graham, who was the best character. You had Ryan, who was wooden. I'm not sure if it's the actor or if it was the writing. You had Yaz, that out of nowhere just had a crush on the Doctor. I mean, there was no hint whatsoever. And, writing quality, a decline in the quality of writing, dialogue, or episode structure can turn viewers away. I mean, I will tell you, the specials, not special. I feel as though a lot of the writing quality disappeared. I think RTD is copying his homework from the first era and just altering it slightly. I think that I think the quality, when I watched Dot and Bubble, I'll have to do a review on it. Long story short, I did not like it. And again, I could see that those things are turning people away. Not everybody's, disgust is everybody's, favorite. Not everybody's favorite is their disgust also. I can understand that. But again, when you go from a Christmas special that had a 7-day plus 4 screens at about 7.49 million, and that should be the 7-day plus 4 screens, if not higher, for Ncudi's first episode, and it's not. There's about 3.5 million people missing. Well, they're not all sexist. They're not all racists. Like, something happened. Now, maybe it was again, I think it's always a bad idea when you have, I think the worst thing about social media is that we've gone from a era of just the Hollywood actor and the director and stuff like that being mysterious and kind of cool. Well, now we know exactly what they think all the time, and I think that possibly could be turning people away. So what they say on social media, for right or for wrong, again, love the actor, hate what they say, but I think that that is up to the individual person also. Casting and character changes. So a new cast member, introduction of new actors, characters, especially a new Doctor, can be polarizing. Longtime fans may not immediately warm up to their new portrayal. Again, I don't think Ncuti is a good Doctor actor. I don't know what he did in Sex Education. I feel as though his body language is just all over the place. I do not like his constant honey thing. I don't like that as a catchphrase. There might be some of you that do. I don't like it, but I think he's not that good of an actor. I think Jodie is actually a better actor than him, and Matt Smith destroys all of them. Peter Capaldi destroys all of them. David Tennant, Christopher Eccleston destroys all of them, in my opinion. Departure of a popular character, the exit of a beloved character can see the drop of viewership as well, too. And we can see that possibly from the 14th Doctor / 10th Doctor leaving in the specials. Again, we've talked about this in the podcast previously. The 13th Doctor's comic strips were not selling. So what did they do? Well, they drug out the 10th Doctor, threw him in all the comic strips in order to help sell and salvage the comic strip line. Right or wrong, they needed to sell something. They knew one person was not selling, so they grabbed a, high quality seller. So I don't know. 3, the production values. Special effects and production quality. If the viewer perceive a drop in production quality, such as special effects, set design, or overall visual presentation, they might become less engaged. Now, one of the interesting things is, at least with the Disney production, I believe personally that this is the cleanest the show has been, especially since, we went to Volcano World, where the Doctor and Yaz went to trapeze circus school in order to get out of a situation, an unseen adventure or whatnot. But that was pretty horrible. But I feel as though the production values on this current season is pretty good, even though, Dot and Bubble was just basically lots of light pastels, and probably the Doctor and Ruby, the actors, being on a green screen and just saying their lines. I think that was... I mean, I did see on the special effects that the slug creatures were actually created, or at least one of them was, so that they could use them as a practical effect, which I am all for practical effects. I've been rewatching lots of shows from the early 2000s. They might not have the best special effects or whatever, but you can tell that there was lots of practical effects. And I think that was really what makes it quite well. Directing and pacing issues with the directing style or pacing of an episode can affect how engaging the show feels. I'm not the best at direction. I am pretty good at pacing. I think, especially with the 1 minute in which the Doctor just kept on just gasping and yelling and whatnot, when he figured out the end of the Dot and Bubble about why everybody's... that is so stupid. How all those people were dying. It took so much long. It was just drug out. I'm not sure for dramatic purposes, but I don't know. I'd be curious. I almost want to rewatch Dot and Bubble with the audio description on, just to see if it gives any hint to what Liam and Legion and Humphrey would be expecting. I'm very curious about that. Some external factors. Competition. The other TV shows that are airing at the same time in the same time slot can draw viewers away, especially those shows that are highly anticipated or critically acclaimed, which is always something to consider. However, I think the overnight figures, we need to stop, and some of these YouTubers need to stop, dancing on the grave of the show because of the overnight figures. Because it is aired on the iPlayer first, I think the 7-day consolidated, even the 7-day plus 4 screens, I think the 7-day consolidated, I'm still with that a little bit more than the plus 4 screens. But you would assume that because you can watch this anytime for the first 7 days and it counts as a viewing figure, I feel as though that those should be the numbers that are looked at the most, because, again, these are coming out first. You are... Sorry, lost my train of thought. You can watch it before it airs on TV. You have 7 days. I know within the first airing of the first 2 episodes of season 1, the excuse of it was good weather. Well, was it good weather for all 7 days? Is that why the viewing figures remained low for the 7-day consolidated? How about episodes 3, 4, 5? Has it been just fantastic weather for, what would that be? That's 5 weeks, 35 days. 35 days of fantastic weather in England. I've been to England before, in the UK. I don't think you would have, I think the world would be getting ready to come to an end if it was fantastic weather all for 35 consecutive days in a row. But that's just my experience from 2 vacations that I've been to in England around this time. Streaming services, the rise of, and here is a good plausibility for viewership drop is the rise of streaming platforms, on-demand videos. But again, this show is now on-demand first over live action. It can divert traditional TV audiences, which we know, which is why I think that the overnight viewing figures need to stop being looked at as heavily. It needs to be the 7-day consolidated. But again, I think the other thing that needs to be considered is sometimes those people, kind of like Liam, I know he has not done this, but at previous times he's discussed this. He's going to wait for the entirety of the series to end, not the season, the series to end, and then he's going to binge the whole thing. Well, what are the likeliness of people who are just wanting to just sit down because we've been spoiled by Netflix and some of the Amazon Prime stuff that gets dropped all in one day, that we just sit down and we watch the whole series and binge it all in one day? That has to be considered. But again, if you're trying to show the show's success, I think you can't just say, and Netflix does it too, if they drop a brand new show and it does not have viewing figures for the first day or the first week, oftentimes the show might not get picked up for a second season. Was it 1899? That fantastically, science fiction show that people have been raving about did not have the viewing figures required by Netflix to elicit a second season. And, it's devastated a lot of people. But again, that it's a corporation. It is a business. So if you're going to be binging and waiting to binge the whole season, don't be surprised when it doesn't get picked up for a second season. Don't wait, because corporations are impatient. They need to continue on with making money. That is their job. Number 5, marketing and promotions. Promotional efforts. Insufficient marketing or promotion can result in lower viewing figures. I will tell you, one of the YouTubers that Liam likes, the Theories, I was looking at his Twitter account, and he posed a question to or anybody that followed him or whatnot, asking specifically for people outside of the U.S. Let's see, where is that? People outside the U.S. So he said, for non-UK followers, question for you. Have you noticed an increase in conversations surrounding Doctor Who since the series launched on Disney Plus? I've been asked by many people if I'm excited about my favorite show, Doctor Who, being on Disney Plus, but none of those people are watching it, as they are not into the science fiction genre. So that is what I replied to. Some people said, no, not really. But to be fair, where I'm at, it's never been the talk of the town. And I think that is the struggle with this show being on Disney Plus, is just because it's on Disney Plus doesn't mean people are going to want to watch it just because it's there. Now, my brother did say that he has seen some trailers for on Disney Plus, and the current season, at least through the trailers and teasers, it does look quite interesting, and he does not like science fiction easily. So that was kind of an interesting thing that happened actually just the other day. But viewing habits and trends. So shifts on how people consume media, binge watching. Okay, so I discussed that earlier as well, can affect live TV ratings. Again, we need to go away from the live TV ratings. Franchise fatigue. That's an interesting thing. It's been brought up, the superhero fatigue, the Marvel movie fatigue is the reason why some of these Marvel shows are kind of crumbling. But you could also say, this show's existed for 60 years, 40 years in visual media, and it's been in, audio media, it's been in book media, it's been in comic media, it's had it had Doctor Who magazine. I think there could be a portion of the fans that are fatigued by the current run and are just going back into enjoying the classic stuff, which I actually kind of agree. As the past couple of years, I've been a comic book reader. I've actually found myself finding more enjoyment from reading comics from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s compared to the modern comics. So I do understand that. Seasonal timing. So the date of airing the show can affect the ratings, for instance, during major holidays or competing events such as sports championships could reduce viewerships and also could have spillovers too. Fan base reaction. So if the seasons do not meet the expectation, and here is something that I really feel as though that RTD really needs to focus on, because Chris Chibnall could not have cared less. If the season does not meet expectations of longtime fans, whether due to plot direction, character changes, or thematic shifts, it can lead to decline in viewership. And I think that is a super important thing, and also a worrying thing, because I believe, according to what I've heard, is the series 2 of this D+ BBC Doctor Who series has wrapped its shooting. Well, I'm not sure they've been able to react as needed to some of the criticism. So I think season 2 is going to be very similar to season 1. And if changes aren't made, I think that it's going to be 2 seasons done on Disney Plus, and it might not be picked up for a third one. It'll be kind of interesting to find out, though. And then social media and online reviews. Negative buzz on a social media and poor reviews from critics or fans can contribute to the decrease in ratings. And now, I know that the critics have been panning this show as great. However, they were doing the same thing for the 13th Doctor. And I think you get to the point where critics, are they saying it because they get early access to it? Are they saying it because they have some sort of agenda to get past? Are they saying it because, they don't want to, come across as racist or sexist, saying something derogatory about a female or, non-white doctor? And it's one of those things that you do have to consider, because why is the fans saying that it's not good, but the critics have been raving about the series? Either the critics are in some sort of weird bubble where, in all honesty, I never believe a critic's review, because they like artsy stuff. They like different stuff. I like my thing. I like dumb, enjoyable thing, and they detest dumb, enjoyable thing. So I think from the critic's side, I'm actually more skeptical when a critic likes something than if they don't like it. If they don't like it, I actually go to watch it because I feel as though there is a disconnect between them and me. But that is just, again, my opinion. So those are some things that I kind of came up with, some internal or external factors revolving around the show, whether or not it is successful. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what's going on with Doctor Who, with the viewing figures, with the fandom. Again, I don't feel as though the fandom is super toxic. The concern that you have to wonder is it's not the people who are yelling and criticizing the show. It's not the ones that are praising the show. It is the ones that are experiencing apathy and have said nothing about the show. They went from being a fan to no longer talking about the show at all. Those are the ones that you need to be worried about, viewership-wise. And I think that's where the BBC, that's where Disney, that's where RTD, that's where, who knows, Mark Gatiss in the future, that's where the focus needs to be. Not the people that are praising it, not the people that are criticizing it, because people that are criticizing it are doing it for two reasons. Either A, because they love the show so much, they're passionate about it, or B, they're making a buck off of YouTube. And you know what? Good for them. I can't be phony. I can only be myself. That's how it is. Again, what are your thoughts about this episode of the podcast? Email the show at Alhambra Audio. That is ALHAMBRA Audio, all one word, at gmail.com. Tweet the show at Alhambra Podcast. DMs are open. And until next time, where I probably will review something, I have a couple of ideas of what to do. I will see you in time.
It could have been a lot better. It could have been slightly better written, especially the last story. Well, not only that, but it was also very cliched. It was very routine, running up and down corridors and silly monsters. It was perhaps a little too routine Doctor Who, very much what the audience is expecting, and it's not really very challenging for them to watch.
You have been listening to the Doctor Who Alhambra Podcast. Doctor Who is owned and trademarked by the BBC. Doctor Who Alhambra is not affiliated with the BBC or Big Finish. No infringement is intended. Visit our website at alhambrapodcast.weebly.com or email the show at alhambraaudio@gmail.com. Tweet us at Alhambra Podcast. That is ALHAMBRA Podcast. Thank you.